Hi, this is Muse Kastanovich with The Absolute Sound. Today I'll be reviewing the Bowers Wilkins 702 Series 3 Signature Loudspeakers.
Just a brief interruption, esteemed viewers. If you enjoy our videos, you might also like our other work for audiophiles and music lovers: written equipment reviews, editor's choice ratings, product news, and music reviews. Get the latest each week with a free subscription to our email newsletters. A link is in the description.
This is a review I wanted to write for a couple of years now. I coveted the look of the previous 702 S2 signature when I saw photos of them in the Daytuck wood finish. I had heard the standard 702 S2, but never got to hear the signature version until now. The price for Series 3 is $9,000. 3 times 3, it's a three-way and has 3 woofers. Once in the mid-90s for a rock band I was in, I ended up writing 3 songs in a row which had 27 lines of lyrics each, 3 sets of 3 sets of 3. After learning of the advancements in the 700 S3s, I was certainly pleased when Robert Harley suggested I review the signatures. There's also a signature 705 S3 with the same finishes, a mini monitor with limited bass, at exactly half the price. And there's an 801 and 805 signature as well, at far higher prices. Even the non-signature 800 series models go for more. But let's celebrate the fact that B&W cares about those with real-world incomes enough to offer us 2 signature models in the attainable 700 series. Many years ago, my main reference speakers were the B&W Matrix 804 first series. They sold for $2,200 a pair in the early 90s, about $5,000 in 2025 dollars. So in that sense, they were more like the modern 700 series than the 800 series. They were built in the UK as the 800 series is now, but the 700 signature is now manufactured in China, as are the others in the 700 series. I was very happy with my 804s for a long time, and I modified them a bit, adding higher quality caps to the crossovers and strengthened the driver mounting areas with adhesive. The 702 has been the largest and priciest of the 700 series since the release of the Series 2 in 2017. The first 700 series came out about 2003, and then enough years passed that the S2 and S3 can be considered a new line. It is a 3-way floor-standing tower with 5 drivers and a bottom port. Other 700 series models are rear-ported. The carbon dome tweeter is mounted in a long teardrop-shaped solid aluminum body assembly, carefully decoupled from the cabinet via vibration-absorbing material. My old 804s had the tweeter on top design as well, though it was more vibration-prone plastic housing, lacked the rounded surface near the driver to minimize edge diffraction, and not decoupled from the cabinet. Yes, there's been a lot of advancement in design over the past 30-plus years. In fact, I can say the new 702 S3 signature does not sound like my old 804s at all, except for the fact that both designs offer good performance for their generation and price. There's a dedicated mid-range cone, 6-inch, using 4-key Bowers Wilkins technologies. The continuum cone, FST, biomimetic suspension, and mid-range decoupling. The fixed suspension and biomimetic spider are the most unique features of this, the latter indicating no surround at the outer edge of the mid-range cone. The biomimetic suspension is new in Series 3 and is a much thinner, minimal version of a spider connected to the voice coil former. These thin strips of material are able to guide the voice coil on its path while moving, and B&W says this, like many of the refinements in the S3, helps reduce distortion. A word about the midnight blue metallic finish on the review pair I received. It does not look very blue or very metallic unless in full sunlight. It looks black at night. They call the base cones aerofoil profile since they are thicker where they are driven near the voice coil former in the center. Those are 6.5-inch each. They're a composite structure of 2 paper cones with a lightweight foam in between. These offer lightweight, stiff, and non-resonant performance optimized for frequencies from the upper bass down. So each of the three driver types is optimized in multiple ways with technology and design specific only to the particular frequency range it needs to reproduce. Drew Callback reviewed the 703S3 and TAS 342 last year. That one goes for $6,000. Largely similar to the 702 Signature, it has nearly the same drivers and cabinet. I would expect more than a family resemblance in the sound, though the 702 has one more woofer and a bottom vented port. So you would expect deeper and smoother bass response, and this was certainly borne out in my listening. Drew only found the 703's bass to be perfectly adequate, while my experience with the bass of the 702 Signature was more exceptional. In fact, I would say the Signatures have the deepest and most impressive bass of any speaker I have ever had in my home. And the bottom port maximizes speaker placement location flexibility, making them less finicky about rear wall distance, like my Paradigm Founder ADFs. I placed them between 12 and 15 inches from the rear wall. Other than the bass, I experienced everything Drew described sonically and musically about the 703, but even more. So I'll try not to duplicate and read that review first if you can. B&W states that the difference compared to the standard 702 are the 702S3 Signature utilizes upgraded mid-range and low-frequency motor systems, improved capacitors, revised speaker terminals, plus a more open tweeter grill mesh. Indeed, everything about these speakers exudes luxury. From the delicate gold-toned circles around each driver, to the classiest cable terminals I've ever had my hands on, to the large tool-adjusted chrome spikes, to the mirror finish multi-coat lacquer shine, they live up to their signature name. At nearly 80 pounds each, anyone who is not football linebacker size like me will definitely want to get some help moving them into position. I started out with the front and rear spikes equal, so that with my low listening seat, my eyes and ears were a bit below the plane of the top of the cabinet. This was mainly responsible for the softness of vocals and other sounds, as I found out later. I do not recommend listening below the axis of the top. When I tipped the speakers down a bit so that my ears were exactly on the axis of the top of the cabinet and below the tweeter, things fell into place much better. Imaging was more convincing and timbres were more natural. Once you get on that top axis, the sound will really snap into place. There was more coherence and realism to instruments and voices. As for the lateral axis, I first tried having the fronts pointed directly at me, but there was too much treble energy that way. The best balance is towed in such that the inner sidewall appears between 1/2 and 1/4 of the width of the front of the speaker itself. The differences here were subtle, though. They have quite a smooth lateral dispersion. For my absolute sound reference, I visited the Santa Fe Opera to see The Elixir of Love by Donizetti. Truly wonderful performances from all involved. After getting home, I queued up the 1990 recording of it by Deutsche Grammophon and the Metropolitan Opera on Tidal, with Kathleen Battle and Luciano Pavarotti. The performances and sound on this recording are a real knockout, too. The choral passages impressed me even more than the solos or duets. This was due to the amazing impression of plurality. It did not feel like only two speakers were making the sound. There was a very convincing feeling that there was a large number of singers on a stage in front of me, almost the same as when I heard the real thing at the opera. In fact, the closest to the real thing I've ever heard in my home. So impressive, because full chorus with orchestra is perhaps the most difficult to reproduce convincingly of all musical ensembles. Really wonderful, such a facsimile that I hardly missed the live performers at all. This was with the AGD Duet monoblock power amps and AGD Andante preamp. Speaker cables were the Shunyata Delta throughout, except for with my single-ended Class A Zen amps, I prefer the AlphaCore Gertz MI2T, all bi-wired. Back to the bass performance again. These B&W 702 signatures have truly the finest low end of any speakers I've listened to here. It is strong, endlessly deep, solid, enveloping, tuneful, and nearly holds you in its arms. All this without being boomy, overblown, or getting in the way of anything else that is going on musically. Makes everything sound larger than the room and more exciting. What an asset. My listening room is smaller than many, at 10 by 15 feet, and I listen with the speakers along the long wall and listening seat backed up against the opposite wall. Vive la différence. And speakers 7 feet away from my head. But I use a lot of foam and fabric sound absorption for first reflections, carpet, and the ceiling is sloped. Excellence in the treble as well. I have to say this carbon dome tweeter is the finest I've ever experienced for an extended time. It's a 1-inch tweeter. The first breakup resonance is listed at 47 kilohertz, and I believe it. No peaks, dips, or roll-off were evident at all in its response, other than at the treble mid-crossover region, more on that later. Just pure, clean, crystalline, quick, delicate when called for, complex, high frequencies. They talk about achieving very low distortion, and you can hear it. Case in point was the Hellbound Train anthology from Steve Tibbetts on Qobuz. Some of my favorites, Night Again, The Big Wind, and Aerial View, faithfully served up to the limits of my hearing, seemingly to the top limits of the recording itself. Percussive sounds, including guitar, were immediate and exciting. Superb pace and drive, with no compression and no hangover. That while driving the speakers with the AGD Andante and the Rogue Audio Dragon monoblock hybrid power amps, with a tube input stage and a Class D solid-state output stage. Okay, honesty time. My listening sessions in 2019 with the previous 702 S2 model at Listen Up Audio in Albuquerque. They were kind enough to let me use my single-ended solid-state amps in one of their large listening rooms for extended auditioning. In comparison to 2 speaker models from other manufacturers, they had a flaw. They did not reproduce vocals realistically. Though they had other wonderful strengths which I liked, there was a visible in measurements too, 6 dB dip at about 2 kilohertz, and another at 5 to 6 kilohertz depending on listening axis, which I could not overlook. Interestingly, none of the floor standards of that series were reviewed in TAS, only the 705 S2 mini monitors, with simpler crossovers and more conventional midwoofers. And then 3 years later, the 705 S2 Signature was reviewed in TAS also, both receiving raves and some Golden Ear and Editor's Choice Awards as well. Well, I'm pleased to report this issue has been solved in the Series 3, though I'm ultimately more fond of the mid to bass crossover region and the mid to treble crossover region in my long-term reference Paradigm Founder 80F. This overall preference comes after comparing their sounds with all 4 amps I used during the review. The vocal presentation of the Founder is phenomenally lifelike, and it has an advantage. It is a 2.5-way design, which means the midwoofer produces all frequencies from about 50 Hz up to 2 kHz, most of the bass and all of the mid-range, from the same driver. The 702 S3 Signature does come close though, very close, and is gifted with great realism and truly addictive long-term listening satisfaction. That is with any genre of music, mind you. On Kenny Garrett's Pursuance, the music of John Coltrane on Qobuz, the drum kit was in the room with me. The toms and snare had touchable, vibrating wooden bodies, and the drum heads were stretched taut. The drumsticks were deftly wielded. The reverb was dynamic and immediate. The cymbals were metallically brittle. A drum kit is another thing I know the sound of, thanks to playing in rock bands back in the 90s and going to a lot of punk shows in the living rooms of houses with no amplification on the drum kit. The low distortion of these speakers could be habit-forming. Most other manufacturers don't even publish distortion measurements for speakers, but B&W is proud to. Less than 0.5% over much of the audio range is quite low for a speaker. So low, in fact, that subtle gradations of inherent distortion in different recordings can be noticed and compared. Professional recording gear prides itself on low distortion, and often achieves that, even going back to the 60s. Yet with these speakers, I can easily rank the distortion in Frank Sinatra albums, for example, such as some of my favorites, all on Qobuz, Strangers in the Night from 1966, Sinatra at the Sands, 1966, and Sings for Only the Lonely, 1958. In spite of this extraordinary transparency and low-level resolution, they present the recordings with a warm, toe-tapping glow that is simply hard to resist. That was with the Stamina single-ended MOSFET amps I built, once again my favorite amps for sound. Nothing can quite equal them, though the AGD Duets performance comes delightfully close, and they have a lot more power. At the end of the review period, some new gear arrived: the Cambridge Audio EXA 100 integrated amp, EXN 100 network player, and Shunyata Theta cables. Well, with the small amount of authority due to my listening experiences of the B&W 702 with other components, I would have to say these were a match made in heaven. The frequency balance seemed even smoother and more flawless, enabling the system with all of these to sound even more natural and believable. Cambridge has really knocked it out of the park with this new EX series, and they match fantastically with the 702 S3 signatures. The 702 S3 signature is the fifth pair of B&Ws I've had in my home for extended listening over the years, and the first I've reviewed. I own the other four. It would be safe to say I love the Bowers Wilkins speakers, and I always have. But as with anything, some models are better than others. The 702 signature goes for quite a premium over the others I've owned, but is well worth it. To hear it is to want it. To see it is to covet it. And these feelings only get stronger over time. It sounds fantastic with any type of amp, in any room. Its minor shortcomings are quickly forgotten, and it possesses a prodigious balance of strengths. No doubt their 800 series scales even loftier heights of musical magnificence, but the 700 series is right up my alley, as they are for many people. There's something for everyone, from the petite 707 at about $1,800 a pair, up to the biggest, baddest 702 signature for $9,000. This company has one of the largest, most experienced, and well-equipped design and research teams in the industry. The innovations, as well as refinements that they have come up with to reduce distortions in speakers as much as possible, will take your breath away. Yes, here in their mid-priced models as well. I'm thinking about buying a pair with the Daytuck finish. It's got that signature sound. Thanks for watching. For the Absolute Sound channel, this is Muse Kastanovich.